Well, hey guys, welcome back to Ella Teaches English. On today's episode, I want to talk about some things that require no effort that you can do that will up your English game in no time, that will speed up your progress, that will just feel like a walk in the park. I'm all about working smart, not working hard, okay? When you see someone that seemingly is a polyglot or is just very brain smart, most of the time they have something that they're doing right. It's not so much that they worked really hard. Well, it doesn't hurt to have both, but I think working smart takes precedence over working hard. So those are the things that I want to talk about today. Tip number 1 is to limit your language material, everything that you read, everything that you listen to within the most common 3,000 words. And if you want to know what these words are, don't worry, I'll include a link to the PDF so you can find out what they are. But if you also have the Lawman Dictionary app, if you look up a word and it's not within the 3,000 range, it will show up as a blue word as opposed to a pink word if it's a computer version. I'm sure the phone app version has something similar, probably a different color, but there's a distinction between a common word versus a not so common word. So there are multiple ways to finding out if this particular word or if this particular material has the most common 3,000 words. Basically, any sitcom TV shows, American sitcoms, are most of the time within that range. And certainly, you want to actually study the material rather than just passively listen to the material or consume the TV show for what it is, for the plot. Just casually consuming a material that's within the range, that's authentic, doesn't guarantee that you will master these words. But certainly, when you start watching or reading, let's say, difficult TED Talks or Wall Street Journal articles or even New Yorker articles and you're trying really hard, it is a lot more rewarding to be just sticking to what is actually useful, what is at your current level. So yeah, me just being able to do that helped me a lot in the beginning because I was able to weed out information that I have no place of using in the foreseeable future. If you have mastered the 3,000 words, you're guaranteed to be able to conduct 84% of the conversation. Let me rephrase it. You'll have an easier time. You'll have a smooth sailing just understanding 80% of the conversation, or you can speak, you can express yourself at 84% capacity. The rest of the percentage, the rest 16% includes slang, idioms, internet lingo, these irregular language that's reserved for another day. And then the other, I would say like 3 to 5% is words that are beyond the 3,000 range. But even when you see a word that you don't understand in reading or in listening, you can either deduce it by context or look it up in a dictionary. Or if you're talking to someone and you hear a word that you don't understand, you can just flat out ask them on the spot. And usually you don't even have to ask them. You can just kind of guess by context. That's the beauty of mastering the most common words. That gives you enough leverage to either deduce what the unknown word is or be competent enough to form a sentence, to form a question, to ask what the word is. So that's tip number 1. Do your best to only acquire materials that have English and Chinese at the same time, so you don't have to look up every single thing. So again, most TV shows already do that. Most popular TV shows will have Chinese and English subtitles. You want to be able to read something, at least for the first time, read something in both languages so that you can naturally pick up, oh, this is the phrase, this is what I don't know, this is what I should pay attention to. Whereas if everything is in English and English only, there's too many missing bits and you're too distracted. You're just trying to make sense of what is even being spoken. If there's only Chinese, you don't even know what words they're using, what the sentence was. It goes without saying, I feel like, but I'm still gonna say it. And that's another thing. When you watch a TV show, a lot of times subtitles will have mistakes, like both in the English subtitles and in the translation. I find that oftentimes the mistake is in the translation because the English subtitles are directly copied from the TV show's official script or official website, but people make mistakes translating it into Chinese. So I would just be very, very careful. Okay, tip number 3 is read and listen to the text simultaneously. In the past, I've alluded to the fact that I don't practice listening, certainly not in the sense that I'm just listening to something I don't understand. I'm listening to 天书, for instance. When I listen is usually when I'm doing a chore, I'm walking on the street, or I'm driving. I'm unable to read the text of something. It's out of convenience. I'm still consuming information that is comprehensible to me. Does that make sense? But when I started, I read more than I listened to materials. And even when I was listening to a material, say I'm listening to a TV show, right? I'm watching something and listening at the same time. So even when I did listen to something, there's always text linked to it. So things like podcasts, popular podcasts, although very useful, very interesting, very authentic even, like all the phrases and words are very common, very useful. Because there's oftentimes missing text, you don't get the full benefit. I know some podcasts have a website where they put the official transcript of the podcast, but they don't do that with every podcast. They don't do that with every episode. And you don't always remember to look up the script. It's not always convenient to do so. Getting a reading material that comes with audio, just watching a TV show, or just watching or reading a textbook with the audio version as well are just your surefire way to guarantee that you're understanding and reading and listening at the same time. Why bother to even do so, you might ask? A lot of beginners are usually struggling with their pronunciation or grammar in the beginning. Like hopefully by the time you're reading something, you're mostly focused on picking up words, picking up on expressions. But when I started, I was still kind of struggling with some of the complex grammar rules, or liaison, connected speech, different intricate speech patterns. If I don't hear something, it's hard for me to imagine myself speaking the same way. And a lot of times, if I run into a word that I don't know and it's only on paper, I'm not going to look it up. I'm not going to look it up in a dictionary, at least not right away. And oftentimes, people assume their own pronunciation. They put their own pronunciation onto a word when this word is not pronounced that way. And even native speakers make the same mistakes. Epitome is often pronounced as epitome because it's spelled weird, It looks like it could be epitome, but no, it's epitome. Or mischievous. A lot of people say mischievous. If you listen to enough podcasts and listening materials, you can avoid making assumptions about words pronunciation. That's my tip number 3. Tip number 4, focus on context. Focus on reading materials as opposed to itemized individual words. Typically, words on a vocab list, words on in the back of a textbook, words in the traditional 新东方红宝书, 蓝宝书, your TOEFL vocab list, your GRE TOEFL vocab list. And even with the vocab list I provided in the first tip, the 3,000 range, I'm only giving you this list so that you can take a look at it and kind of gauge how many words you know, how many words you kind of don't know. That's not for you to go from word A, abandon, to then the last word, I don't know, zoo. Certainly you should not do it sequentially by chronological order, by alphabetical order, because there's nothing linking these words together. We don't learn words individually. Like, think about it when you were picking up on Chinese words, when you were just a little baby. You kind of group these words together by listening to your parents talk. Like, your parents brought you to the zoo, and then they're like, hey, this is this animal, this is that animal. Do you want a candy? Do you want cotton candy? Do you want a balloon? It's very scenario-based. It's very context-based. And when you pick up on words, you pick up on multiple words. You pick up on a whole sentence. You don't learn words by sitting down, looking at a itemized, alphabetized list of words that have no relation to each other. It helps when you know, like, these are the words to look out for. You know, you could spend a day going over the 3,000 vocab and marking what words you already know, what words you should look out for. That way, when you encounter these words in a context, you can pay more respect to them. But don't subscribe to the idea I must sit down and read the entire vocab list and go over each word alphabetically. That's a recipe for disaster. That's a recipe for disappointment. That's not how I learned my words. That's not how you learned your Chinese words. And even if you somehow manage to wield your superhuman memory power, you're going to forget all of them in 2 weeks or a month maximum, okay? If you don't believe me, you do you, but come back to this video in a month and you'll see that I was right. Tip number 5, listen to yourself speak. Narrow down tricky sounds. This one pertains to the pronunciation side of things. If you want to not necessarily perfect your pronunciation, but hone in on the parts where you struggle with the most. I realized that when most people practice pronunciation, it usually falls into either extremes. One group of people don't practice pronunciation whatsoever. They despise people that try to perfect their pronunciation. Maybe out of insecurities, maybe they just have other things to worry about, but for the most part, they don't mess with it. They just say whatever they feel like saying, however they want to say it. And that's fine. If they can get their point across, if people can understand them, they make some mistakes, that's fine. And then we have the other group of people where they'll pick a TED Talk, they'll pick a TV show, immediately start mimicking, start shadowing the entire material, sentence after sentence. Some people even watch my video and shadow my speech. Although I feel really flattered and happy that someone respects my work so much, I am concerned that doing this is not necessarily productive because a lot of times you lack the foundational elements. Like the part that tricks you is not entirely the entire alphabet, the entire 48 phonetic symbols. It's not the entire sentence that trips you up. It's that one little symbol or that one connected speech pattern that keeps repeating itself in different words, in different combinations. But if you haven't taken the time to just hone in on that one specific phenomenon and practice intentionally and slowly and hear yourself and track your progress, you can practice shadowing for hours, for days, for months. You can be really invested in one single piece of material and you're not going to get any progress. And worse yet, you will have no progress, nothing to show, even after all these hours of work. Like when I started practicing my pronunciation, luckily, my 48 symbols, my 48 phonetic symbols were solid. Like I took my time honing in on my consonants. Just any sound that doesn't exist in Chinese, I was forced to hone in on them thanks to my dad. But now that I know better, I'm thankful that he did that. But I certainly didn't know how to say a sentence naturally. Like I did not have the idea of connected speech because schools didn't teach that. Schools didn't prioritize teaching that. So what did I do? I did not go into a TV show and just start mimicking left, right, and center because it was too fast. It was made to be intentionally fast because the actors memorize their scripts. Nobody in real life talks that fast unless they're talking about something that they're familiar with. You know, like me talking about English is something that I'm familiar with. But if you catch me in real life and I'm just talking to you, I'm thinking as I go, I'm not going to speak this fast. I'll try to slow down, I promise. But I only ever practice my pronunciation in the Longman app, actually. When I nailed down the individual connected speech pattern, I took it upon myself to practice the full sentence in the Longman practice your pronunciation feature. That thing is the greatest pronunciation practice tool because all the sentences are actually pronounced by real people. It's not AI generated. It's not machine generated. It's real people. There were about like tens of thousands of sentences, perhaps even more, of individual sentences that have no background noise, are normal speaking speed. It's not too fast. It's not too slow. That have a time limit on the sample sentence. So let's say the sentence, I'm going to go home now. Okay, I just spent like 1.5 seconds, 2 seconds speaking that. When you get to your record button, you're only also given 2 seconds. So if you mess up, if you don't do the connected speech, if you take a break in between, you will be cut off. And so in that way, the machine is training you to speak normally, to speak with a certain rhythm. Do not break when you shouldn't take a break. And then you get the feature of listening to yourself. And I know it's cringe. Believe me, when I first started, I couldn't stomach hearing my own sound. One, because I was just a natural timid kid. I do not even speak a lot in real life to people, to humans, let alone to a machine. And when I was practicing that and hear myself speak, I was just like, I sound horrible. Like, not necessarily my pronunciation was bad, but like my voice is so cringe. Nowadays, I've gotten used to it because I yap for a living. I talk online for a living. But if you also share that sentiment, just don't worry. You're not the only one. I went through that. Nobody has to know you're doing this. Nobody knows how you sound. That's okay. It's between you and me. It's between you and lawman. But you have to listen to yourself. You have to listen specifically to the differences between your version and the native speaker's version provided by a lawman. Only in listening to the differences can you catch the slight nuances, especially in terms of vowels. Sometimes when you speak too fast, when you speak into the air and you don't have a recording of yourself, you don't realize how big of a mistake you made until you listen back to your recording. Because your brain, when you're a beginner, can only be focused on one thing. Like when you speak, you don't really hear yourself. And same with me as well. I record so many videos regularly now. And when I speak fast, I don't necessarily catch my mishaps. It could be mishaps in terms of pronunciation. It could be mishaps in terms of how I worded things. But when I'm talking to the camera, I couldn't catch all the mistakes because I'm more focused on getting my words out there. So listening to yourself, practicing individual phonetic symbol, phonetic phenomenon like connected speech intentionally is a very important thing. It's all about working smart, not working hard. And if you have trouble with the basics of pronunciation, if you want to really hone in on your pronunciation skills, I have just a course for you. It's a combo, actually. It's a course on how to systematically learn English, how to individualize your pronunciation practice. We talk about the common vowels, common mistakes in vowels, similar vowels. We compare and contrast different vowels together. We talk about consonants. We talk about liaison connected speech and, rhythm and tones and inflections of different sentences. And we give you a lot of examples so that you can work on them and also receive feedback from me and my fellow teacher. So don't miss out on that if you're currently in the pronunciation phase of your practice. And the last tip is to prioritize mastering 70% of the grammar rules first. And it just so happened that my course has a grammar portion. So if you struggle with grammar, consider buying my course. And if you don't like it, you get 7-day, no questions asked, refund back to you. No worries at all. You gotta do what you gotta do. I just want to get that information out to you. But why is grammar so important? Let's talk about it. In Chinese, grammar rules are more lax. They're more improvised. They're more flexible. And there's a benefit to that. And for non-native Chinese speakers, it's probably even more complicated. So if you look at it like that, English grammar rules being kind of strict, kind of disciplined, kind of not flexible is actually a plus. And believe me, because the two languages are so different, like if you're a Chinese native speaker, some of these grammar rules are not intuitive. You kind of have to mechanically learn it. And the longer you postpone actually studying these grammar rules, the harder time you're going to have in listening and reading and speaking. Many people don't associate learning grammar with speaking and listening. They just think, you just speak however you want to speak. You just use words. Or listening, that's something to do with your ears. But no, whenever there's a sentence, whether you spoke the sentence yourself or somebody else spoke the sentence to you, there's a structure to it. There's a very distinct and necessary elements in every sentence, short and long. There's different tenses, there's different orders of things that you cannot, realistically speaking, cannot naturally pick up on just by listening or reading to a certain material over and over, or even living in a certain environment. And a lot of times you can master these grammar rules before you fully master all the common words. Certainly, I advise my student to do that first because it's going to help your reading by giving you a clear structure. Like if you have mastered 70% of the grammar rules, which taking my course will help you achieve. A lot of times you can read faster, you can read a lot more. And when you read more, you can pick up on words more and faster. So it's a win-win situation. Even when you don't understand every single word in a sentence, but if you have a clear structure, you can see the structure of a sentence, you can kind of deduce what the sentence meant. And if you are missing a word, you can look it up, you can ask your teacher. But if it's a reverse situation, if you understand every single word, but your grammar is lacking, you won't be able to understand what the sentence is about. That's with reading. It's even worse in listening. When you don't have clear grammar structures in your head, you can listen, you can hear every single word, but you won't be able to see, you won't be able to hear where that sentence ends. And everything is going to sound like a mumbo jumble, like words will just come together. And it sucks even worse if your pronunciation is also wanting, because you can't hear two words linked together. All you hear is a mishmash of words, of sounds rather. So figure out 70% of grammar by taking my course or taking any sort of grammar course. Not to toot my own horn, I think my grammar course is the most concise. It's the most big picture structural course that focuses on the most common thing, the most useful thing right away. Like we don't talk about how to pluralize a noun, how to add an S or an ES or an D or an ED or an ING or double the N and then ING. No, we talk about the how and the why first. Then we talk about, okay, how to conjugate, where to look up different conjugations of different verbs and all that kind of irrelevant stuff. Not super unimportant, but you want to be able to understand and hear and speak a sentence before you want to fully spell out everything and spell correctly. I think most people have an aversion for learning grammar because they've been traumatized by how traditional schools, traditional textbooks, traditional English teachers teach grammar. And in some way, I think having someone that did not major in English, there's this guy on YouTube, I forgot his name, 英语2. I'm pretty sure he majored in STEM. Like most teachers kind of beat around the bush when it comes to teaching grammar or pronunciation. Yeah, so that's my input. Take my course or don't take my course, but regardless, prioritize learning the most common grammar rules, and you're going to have a breeze of a time learning new words, picking up on new materials, even reading English definition in a dictionary, which is another tip, but we won't talk about it today. So yeah, that is all for today. And I just want to emphasize, look into my parallel text, look into my English pronunciation and grammar rule course. It's going to help you massively. Like you're going to come back and thank me. You're going to want to take everything that I ever put out, course, ebook, everything. Trust me. Because I had learned that myself. Everything I'm telling you today is something that I realized along my journey. I don't have the book or the idea like all in one place, but I am reconsolidating it. I'm combining it. I'm compiling everything I learned, and I put it in a concise, well-designed fashion, present it in a course, present it in an ebook so that you don't have to waste time, okay? It's 2024. Let's not waste time. Let's just find out what actually works and do that consistently, a little bit at a time. All right, I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.